Edwin was the little mean one of my brothers, the sweetest but the meanest. And he told me that I needed to pep up the piece I was playing. It didn't have enough rhythm to it. He said, your teacher would be so tickled if you would add what I know and you know it needs. And I said, well, what does it need? He said, well, when you go up like that, it needs to be. He said, not just poke along there, so do it. And I said, well, if you're sure she'd like that. Oh, yes, he said, sure. So, boy, when I sat down, I didn't dawn on me I wanted to do it. So when I started doing it, and I got right in the middle of the real fast thing like that, I looked up and she was going, and so when I got through, she said, Beneva, you have been playing that piece perfect. What happened? I said, well, Edwin said it needed some more jazz to it. And she said, oh, well, that explains it completely, because Edwin was always doing things like that. My name has a real ring to it. Daddy and a bunch of his friends were talking about what they were going to name their next baby, and if they had a little girl, what they were going to name it. And so Daddy said, well, he knew what he'd name his if it's a little girl. He was going to name me after Uncle Ben. And so he named me Beneva. And then the man standing next to him said, well, you know what? I have a brother named Louis. We could name mine Louisa. And then they had Jim, my niece, was there, and he said, well, I could name mine after my brother Jim, but they've got to all be girls. But anyway, there were 5 of us, and we were all named with a name plus the Eva. All went to school together, and the first year, the teacher was devastated. And one day she came, asked Daddy when he was out up at the school, she said, tell me something. What have I done to deserve this? And he said, what? And she said, I have 5 kids in my first grade, all named Eva. Beneva, Lou Eva, Jim Eva. He said, well, that's how life works. I was born in 1925. And I was born in Quitman, Arkansas. That's a little town about 30 miles north of Conway. And it had about 400 people in it. And so you knew everyone, but the awful part of it is every parent there knew who you were. And if you needed correcting, you were corrected. My dad was strictly a businessman from day one. And his daddy thought that you couldn't have too much schooling, that you needed to go to school as long as you could. They had had a real flood in San Antonio, Texas, and they had asked for all the young men to come down and help. They needed help. So Daddy was just a young man at that time, and so he went down to help. And he was so good and doing exactly what they said that they really rewarded him with a good-sized amount of money when he left. So he came home and put in a little store. Well, it just grew overnight. And it just got larger and larger, and he had more money. So he had the only store in that little town for everyone to eat and feed their animals and sell their cotton and everything. It was just a family town. My mom was really one of the smartest people. To this day, I look back and think how really intelligent she was. She read everything she could find. And so she knew what was going on in this world. She could draw and she could paint and she knew color. And so she would tell her friends or show her friends what she had done last week and what she had painted and drawn. And so they said, well, teach us how to do that. And she said, okay, well, come on over to the house. So they set up one day a week that they all would come to the house, gather around Mother's dining room table and paint whatever they wanted to. And she had no preschooling at all as far as the painting was going. It was just all natural. I had two older brothers, and they felt like they had to take care of me no matter where I was or what I was doing. They were boss. My oldest brother's name was Cole, and he was more like Mother. He was very studious and wanted to know everything that was going on. Edwin could have cared less. All Edwin wanted to do was to paint a picture of a dog. And that's usually what he did. These are sayings that my daddy would write at the end of the day in his, whatever you call those books, they keep books on. My daddy did not teach me how to live. He lived and let me watch him do it. The greatest gift my father gave me was to believe in me. But this is the greatest one I think that he has in here. Love is not counting the years, it's making the years count. I just love that one. I'm sure he just needed to write something, and he just, if he had any left on that page that he hadn't charged that day. My great-grandparents came over from Scotland. She had a baby at the time, and I don't know how old it was, but anyway, she put this collapsible rocking chair in their wagon to bring, and her husband said, we can't take that chair with us. And she said, oh yes we can, because the baby is used to me rocking her to sleep and I will need it. And it was a collapsible rocker, which I still have. And it's a wonderful rocker. And so they brought it with them, and everything worked out fine for the baby. Grandpa, that's Mother's daddy, was getting worse and worse all the time. And she said, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything that you would like to have? And he said, yes, I would love to have the choir from the church come sing. And she said, oh, Pop, I don't know, because there are quite a few of them, and I don't know if they can come this time of day. But I'll call and see. So she called the minister, and before we knew it, here came about 25 people that sang in the choir. So they came in and sang for Grandpa, and they were all gathered around his bed, singing and everything, and he just went to sleep and died. So it made Mother so glad that she had gone ahead and done what he wanted. Another funny thing about him is he didn't have much money, but he did get a pension from the war, because he had been in the war, and I don't know how much, but every time he got his pension, the first of the month, he would give Cole $1, Edwin 50 cents, and he'd give me a quarter. And we were so proud of our money, we couldn't see straight. And everyone would just laugh about us getting our money from Grandpa. That was our allowance every month. Buy you 5 ice cream cones. That's all I ever bought with mine. Us kids, we go every day to get our ice cream. And one day we went in there, and it was raining pretty hard, and the roof was leaking. And we would set a glass around, to catch it like this and everything. And then it got to raining really pretty hard, so one of us raised an umbrella. And Daddy just happened to pass and see it. And he looked and looked, and he came in, and then he motioned for me to come outside. And he said, "How on earth can you do that to Mr.?" His name was Roller Martin. "How can you do that to Mr. Roller? He gives y'all ice cream, and you shame him because he doesn't have money enough to roof his building. And you shame him by lifting an umbrella." He said, "You go back and tell him you're sorry, and you pay him for that ice cream." So that was the last time we got free ice cream. When I was really about 6, I guess, Daddy had a new home built for us, and I had my own room, and I was so proud of it and everything. And then we heard about the Lindbergh baby. Well, I knew I was going to be the next one that they would snatch out of the bedroom. So I cried so every night. Mother said, "Put her in our bedroom. She can sleep in there with us." So I finished up my time sleeping with Mother and Daddy. There was a family in Quitman named Grable. They had a telephone switchboard. It was just a big black board with lots of little things stuck in it. And that place was just about a half a block from Daddy's store. So it was real easy for her to call Daddy and say, "Send Beneva up here," and that'll run the switchboard. And I thoroughly enjoyed it because I got to listen to everyone's conversation. I knew more news than anyone else knew in town. During the Depression, when we found out we were going to have to move to Conway, instead of Daddy selling the store to someone, which he needed to because we needed the money, he gave everything in the store to the farmers. He said, "You are the ones who kept us going when things were really bad. So I'm going to empty the store to all of you. So come get only what you need. Don't just take it just because it's free, but what you need." So they did. They came and got it. And you know, all you have to do is read your Bible, because it says when you help those who are less fortunate than you are, that God will help you. And I think that's why Daddy was so successful, because he helped everyone that he could. And then, lo and behold, when we moved to Conway, of course, Daddy had no job. He wasn't trained for anything but this. So he went down and he was talking to Mr. Camp. He was talking to him about, he didn't know what he was going to do. And he said, "Well, Ed, why don't you keep books for me? Because I need someone who really knows what they're doing." Daddy said, "Okay." And so about that time, Mr. Thompson walked in, who owned Thompson's men's store. And the guy said, "Ed's going to keep books for me." And he said, "Hey, Ed, would you keep books for me too? You could do it for 2 people. Well, about that time, Mr. Adams was walking down the street, and the guy said, "Just a minute." So he walked out and called Mr. Adams in. He said, "Sid, don't you need a new bookkeeper?" And he said, "You know, believe it or not, I really do." "Why?" And he said, "Well, Ed's here, and you know, he had to let his store go, and he needs a way of making a living." So he kept books for 3 different people, and they paid him really well for it, because I went to college. I had no problem, you know. I mean, he was making enough for us to live on and eat and everything. So we survived. Once we graduated from Conway High School, some of the wealthier boys and girls went to Hendrix, and the rest of us went to UCA, and loved it. I went 4 years, and I was in my 4th year and taking chemistry, and I went to school that morning, and Mr. Robinette, who was my teacher, said, "Beneva, go in and light the ovens." And I said, "Okay." So I hopped down and went in there, and I was sitting there. The oven, and I kept smelling this funny odor, but I didn't know what it was. But anyway, I struck the match, and when I struck the match, I felt like I had gone to the moon. I mean, I had been blown across the room. Every window had been blown out of that lab. I mean, it blew my clothes off, my hair off, and everything. They took me to Dr. Ed Dunaway, and he said, he told Mother, he said, you know, Miss Eula, I'm going to be true to you. She may not make it because this is really a bad burn. So, but anyway, they bandaged me up and everything. And Dr. Ed, oh, bless his heart, came every day to check me out. He came every day. Because I spent 6 weeks in the hospital and 6 weeks at home, bandaged. So, could have been a really bad accident, but thank God I don't have a scar, I don't have one blemish of any kind. Just don't have any eyesight. When, of course, I couldn't go to school there for quite some time, and that was my graduating year. And so when Mr. Robinette talked to all of them about what had happened to me and everything, that everyone gave me an A. I graduated with straight A's and walked across that stage like I was the smartest one there. At that time, a home ec major was a real new thing for the colleges. I thought, well, you know what can be better? That's what you're going to do all your life anyway, is cook and sew and also, sure, I'll be a home ec major. And it was fun. It was not hard, and it was just a lot of fun. We just learned to cook everything under the sun. Well, when we were in college, we would have a lot of famous people come to the college to perform for us. And the Von Trapp family came, and they were very warm and wanted to talk to everyone, and especially the students. And they would say, oh, I wish I had been able to go to college. And because they hadn't had that privilege. And they were a really nice family. But not long ago, they also came back. The family came back to Little Rock. And so I wanted so badly to ask them if they remembered when they were at UCA, but I didn't. I thought it might embarrass them. Well, Bill and I met each other in high school, and I was a cheerleader and he was a football player. And so we had a lot of common interests there. And but he couldn't believe my daddy was so liberal and his daddy was so stern. But this picture of the wedding, goodness alive, Brother Gaius just lived across the street from us, and they didn't have any children, so he thought I was their daughter. And when I finished college and went to Dallas to work, he stood at the plane and cried just like Daddy. And then, now this is my tiara that I wore for the wedding. And I couldn't find one here in Little Rock that I liked, so I just made it. And it was fun to wear because everyone kept saying, are you sure it won't come undone? Are you sure it won't? But the wedding was fun because it was just like another cookout or something for all of us. So it turned out to be fun. And then we went to New Orleans. And here, this is Cole and Edwin and Bill and my sister-in-law and me. And we were leaving after the wedding. And wouldn't you know, our wedding was so late in the afternoon that we couldn't get past Little Rock. We had to stay in Little Rock. But it was fun. And Then we drove on to New Orleans the next day, and Bill had already learned to love fresh oysters at that time. I had not, but he couldn't wait to get down there and get some oysters. And I thought, he must be out of his mind eating those old raw, stinking things. Then I learned to love them. The first house that Bill and I lived in was a duplex. And the couple that lived on the other side of the duplex were our best friends, Polly and Phil Bumpers. And it had a little, down the hall, it had a little door that opened on either side, and that's where the phone was to sit. You didn't have two phones, you just had one, and both families used it. But the minute that Phil and Bill would go to work, Polly and I'd open the doors, and we'd stand there and wash dishes and talk to each other. And if one had to go somewhere, you just pass the babies through the door. We didn't even know what getting a babysitter was, because we would take care of each other. And so that was fun. And to the day, I think, that Polly died, she was still saying, "Oh, Beneva, I remember when we used to pass the kids, how much fun it was." And they loved it because, they were getting to go somewhere. We had 4 children. They each had different qualities. Susan was the oldest, and no child was ever as smart as Susan, so her daddy thought. She was a good child, she minded, and she was so much like my mother, it was funny, because she wanted to be the smartest one, and still does. You still see that in her. And but it was fun. And she bossed all the little kids. Then here came Bill, who was a happy-go-lucky sort of fella, and was willing to help me. He spent his time helping me. I need to go help Mama. I can hear that ring in my ear. I need to go help Mama. And then here came Betty, that was just a little chatterbox, and knew that she was the prettiest one that had ever been born, and that she would win the world with her beauty and charm. And she was one of those little girls that when she went to town, to the office, she would skip going down, and people like Mr. Fawcett, that took pictures, people like him, and quite a few of them would come out when they'd see her coming and say, "Come on, Betty, I'll skip with you." And these big men skipping along with Betty. And it really was sweet, no kidding. And Bill would say, "Who you been skipping with today?" And Betty'd say, I don't know his name, Daddy." And it could be anyone from George Simon to no telling who. This shows how long her hair was. And she kept wanting it cut. She said every girl in her class has short hair. So this is when we cut it. And in 1963, she was 8 years old. And but she always had the prettiest hair, and she would let you wash it 3 and 4 times a day if you wanted to. Because she thought that just made her prettier. The night she died, she was going to Hendricks. A bunch of her friends wanted to go out to Cedar Park and have a picnic. So they went out, and so she told Robin, her friend, that she needed to run TT. And they said, "Well, let's go over here by these trees." So they went by the trees, and she just walked one step too far and started going down the side of the thing. And of course, there was a pool of water right there at the base that just sucked her under. And so that's what happened to her. When something like that happens, you think that didn't really happen. I'm just imagining that couldn't have really happened. Then here came Cole. No one could have been hurt more than he was when Betty died, because she pampered him. He was undoubtedly the best kid that ever lived. Sweet. He wouldn't have hurt another child for anything other than let everyone take charge of him and rule him and everything. But it was fun raising them all. This house here had been Bill's mother and daddy's house all those years, raising the boys here. And then we were living in that little house down by the church, and Miss Ferris was here by herself, and she was afraid out here. There were no houses around anywhere. And she said, why don't we swap houses? I'll move to the little house by the church and you can move out here. I said, that's fine. I would love that. We moved out here, and the second morning we were here, I was outside and I thought, I must be out of my mind, wanting to live out there in that big old house out by myself. Anyone could just shoot me and they'd never know it. And I was scared out here. And that very day, I saw George Shaw looking at some land across the street, and I yelled to him. So he said, I'm thinking about buying this land and building some houses. And I said, oh, please do, please do. He said, you mean you really want neighbors? And I said, you bet I do. As many as you can put over there, I want. And so it wasn't long till he started building houses. And so then I got to where I wasn't afraid. And even today, as I go to bed every night, I think to myself, isn't it odd that I'm not afraid anymore? And I used to be so afraid of just the dark. Someone was asking me not long ago how long I had lived here, and I've lived about 58 years in this one house. And it never has leaked, it never has had any problems. And every time I call someone out, a plumber or an electrician or a man to work on it, they always say this is one of the best built houses in Conway. So it served its purpose for us. Being a mother is the most wonderful thing, because you realize right then how wonderful it is that God has given you this little baby to take care of. But being a grandmother is fun, because you don't have to work any, you don't have to do anything but just enjoy. I have 9 grandchildren, and then I have 14 great-grandchildren. And not a one of them has ever forgotten where the cookie tin is. To this day, they run in, and the first thing they ask is, Mom, where's the cookie tin? Where's the cookie tin? And they are nothing in the world but dollar cookies from the Dollar Tree. But they have the best flavor, and they aren't too sweet or too rich. So we keep it always full. Now it's gotten to where Hunter's as bad as the kids are. Sue and Charlie had Chip, and Chip grew up, married, and had 2 children. They also had Ferris, who married Rachel, and they had 3 boys. And then Sarah, who is with Hunter, and they have 3 boys. Then we go over to Bill and Susan, and they had Trey, and he married and had 3 children. And then they had Leah and Lauren and Whitney, and she's married to Leo, and they have 2 children. And then we come down to Cole, and Cole is married to Sue, and they had 2 boys. And one of the sons has just had a little baby girl named Molly that we all adore. And then we're waiting on Mary and and Blake to give us a little boy. So always remember how much fun it is to have grandchildren. There was a quote in here that I like. Kids learn more from example than anything you could ever say. And then there was one about if nothing is going well, call the grandmother. Those who love deeply never grow old. They may die of old age, but they die young. That is a good one. I remember my mother used to always say, you get what you expect in this world. So if you expect a good day, you'll have a good day. But you just say to yourself, oh, I just feel awful. She said, you get to feeling awful. So I thought, well, gosh, it's worth trying. So I got, every time someone, when I get up, say, how were you this morning? To this day, when Bill calls every morning, Mom, how was last night? I say, it was wonderful, and it is. You do get what you expect, I do believe. As a rule, I do expect the best of every day, and it's so.